This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nevin Akaydın. I am with the Santa Clara City Library. We have been offering these webinars with USCIS. And today I'm with Nina Sachdev from USCIS office. Thank you, Nina, for your time and joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Nevin. Thank you for inviting me. And thanking all of you for joining this session today. And I do work for US Citizenship and Immigration Services for their local offices in the Bay Area in San Francisco and San Jose. And I work as a community relations officer. So I have the opportunity and privilege to do presentations like this and answer as many questions as I can. So today's topic is about naturalization and how to become a US citizen through naturalization. And today we're going to go over the rights and responsibilities of US citizenship, the requirements to naturalize, what the interview is like, provide some updates, and at the end I will take your questions. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and go through this slideshow here. So some of the rights and responsibilities is that you have the right to vote. We do have election that's happening right now, so it's exciting, and there's local elections, and in the future we'll have a national election as well, so you get to vote and have your voice be heard. You get to travel on a US passport. You can run for elected office. Many of our local candidates, some of them have actually been through the naturalization process themselves, just like you have or you will. You can work for the US government. Many of my colleagues that work in the office in San Francisco, San Jose, and other offices, they've also gone through this process themselves before they applied and worked for the government. You can upgrade your family petitions. So as a permanent resident, you can petition for your spouse and your child, right? As a citizen, you can also petition for your parents once the citizen is 21 years old and older, and petition for brothers and sisters. So you can petition for more family members. And one of the responsibilities is serving on a jury. So this slide shows a recap of the naturalization process. Basically, you start by preparing the N400 application form. And you can look at that on our website, uscis.gov. Click on forms or click on citizenship. You'll find the form there. I really encourage everybody to look at the form and read the instructions so you know exactly what to fill out and how to do it. And then you can also make an online account with USCIS and fill in the information and apply online. It's a great way to apply. It's faster because you don't have to wait for anything to go into the mail to reach one of our offices. So once you have submitted that with the fee, right now the fee is $725 in total, which includes that $85 biometrics fee. So it's $725. You'll submit that with your form, and then you'll receive a receipt notice in the mail. And if you have an online account, you'll also receive your receipt notice in your online account. And then after that, you'll receive another notice in the mail for your biometrics appointment. And this is where you'll go to an office and get your fingerprints taken and a picture and electronic signature. Some people will get a notice that we are reusing your biometrics. And that's because they were captured at a previous time when you were applying for your green card, for instance, and the fingerprints are still working very well in our system. So you won't need to go for your biometrics appointment. And then you'll wait several months and you'll receive an appointment for your interview. Everybody who is naturalizing will receive an appointment notice to come in person to one of our USCIS field offices. That's what we call them, the field office, for an in-person interview. And that is where the immigration officer will ask you questions and quiz you on the civics and US history questions, and make a decision on your case, whether you're going to become a US citizen or not. And that happens on the day of the interview. The officer will give you a letter, a one-page, that says, congratulations, you've passed, or perhaps they need more time to make the decision, or you did not pass. If you don't pass the first time, you will have another chance. So you'll get another appointment notice where you come into our office about 2 to 3 months later to have a second interview. So you have 2 chances for every 1 application. And if you pass, then you will receive another letter in the mail or in your online account telling you about your oath ceremony. And you go to your oath ceremony, you give USCIS officers your green card. You don't need that green card anymore. You take the oath of allegiance to the United States and you become a US citizen. So the day of the oath ceremony is when you become a US citizen. Okay, so that's the entire process. So let's go through some of that. And the processing time, right? How long does this entire process take? Well, you can always check the processing time on our website, uscis.gov. There is a, on the homepage there, you'll see a picture that says manage my case, manage your case. And underneath that, you'll see check case processing time. So you'll enter the form N400, application for naturalization. The category is application for naturalization, and click the field office you'll be going to. So if you're in Santa Clara, you'll be going to the San Jose field office, and you'll see the months written there. I believe right now it's about 10 months. So you'll see that 80% of the cases are completed within 10 months. So that's how long it's taking. If you've applied and you feel like you've been waiting a long time and you want to know, should I contact USCIS to see if they can do something about my case? Well, on that same webpage, you put in your receipt date, okay, your receipt date. How do you find that receipt date? Well, there's a picture here that shows your receipt notice. On the receipt notice, there's a little box that says received date. That is the date we call your receipt date, right? The day that USCIS received the application and started to put it into our system. You put that date into that web page and you click it, get the inquiry date, and we'll let you know, okay, I know you've been waiting a long time, but your case is still in the normal process. Everything is fine. You just have to wait. Or, you know, your case is beyond the normal processing time. Go ahead and submit an inquiry and we'll let you know what's happening with your case. Okay, so let's go over the requirements to become a citizen through naturalization. This is a slide of all of the requirements and we'll go through each of these separately. So first you need to be an adult, 18 years old to apply, okay? You need to be a permanent resident of the United States. You have a green card. You need to meet the continuous residence and physical presence requirements, live in the United States USCIS district where you apply, have good moral character, and then you must also show a basic understanding of English, knowledge of US history and government, and attachment to the US Constitution. Okay, so for this first point here, you need to be 18 years old to apply to be a citizen through naturalization. Well, what if you are younger than 18, okay? So those of you who have children who are under the age of 18 and who are living with you and are also permanent residents. So they have their green card, you have their green card, right? And they're with you, they're in your custody in the United States. The day that you become a citizen at the oath ceremony, your children automatically become a citizen, okay? Those children that are with you in the United States and they're also green card holders, they're under 18. They also become US citizens, but they don't need to go to the oath ceremony. They don't need to take the oath, and they don't receive any proof that they're US citizens, right? So how do you get proof of that? Well, 2 kinds of documents will give you that proof. US passport shows proof that someone's a US citizen, or you can apply through our agency and receive a certificate of citizenship, right? And that certificate of citizenship, what you would do is file a form called the N600 to get that certificate of citizenship. So you can decide either one of those is proof that your child is a US citizen. Okay, so you're 18 years old to apply to naturalize. The next thing is that you need to be a permanent resident, right? How long do you need to be a permanent resident for? Well, 3 years if you're married to a US citizen, 5 years for everyone else. Okay, 5 years as a permanent resident for everyone else, except if you are a military service member or a veteran, and some children born abroad to US parents as well has its sort of different process. I know for those who have joined the military, they just need to go to basic training and then they can apply to be a citizen through naturalization. All right, those of you who are applying for naturalization based on marriage to a US citizen, okay, at the time of filing, you must have had 3 years as a permanent resident, okay? You must be married to the same US citizen for 3 years. And the US citizen spouse, your husband or wife, must be a citizen for 3 years. All of these 3 years can overlap, so it's not 9 years, but they need 3 years. That's why we call it the 3-3-3 requirement. So the next requirements about travel and good moral character, we are looking at the statutory period. So what is that? Okay, it's a legal term called the statutory period. So in general, it is the period 5 years or 3 years preceding the date of filing the application and up to the oath of allegiance. Okay, so that sounds confusing, right? What does that really mean? So let's say you applied for naturalization on January 19th of this year, 2022. So the immigration officer is going to look back 5 years, so to January 19th, 2017, and they're going to look back in those 5 years regarding your travel, your time outside of the United States, and regarding questions about good moral character, some of those questions, okay? Also, you applied in January of this year, but you're probably not going to have your interview for several months, right? So at your interview, the officer is going to say, well, let's talk about your travel after you applied, right? Or what happened after you applied. And then even at the oath ceremony, when you go there, there's another form for you to fill out to see, has anything changed since your interview? Because maybe you had your interview a few weeks ago. And then you go to your oath ceremony. So the officers will accept that form, may ask you some questions to make sure nothing's changed. So we're just checking for that entire period. Do you still meet the requirements to be a citizen? Okay. Okay, so continuous residence is one of those requirements. The applicants must have continuous residence in the United States during the statutory period. So if you were outside of the United States on one long trip, okay, that was less than 6 months, you meet the requirement, everything's fine. You can still apply to become a citizen. If you were outside of the United States on one long trip, that was about 6 months to 1 year, the officer will ask you questions about your ties to the United States. You may have to provide additional evidence. So they may ask you questions such as, are you still paying rent here or your mortgage in the United States? If you have children, are they going to school here? If you have a job, are you still employed? Or did you work in your home country when you left and you stayed there longer than 6 months? You know, so all of these questions go to see, do you have a connection and ties to the United States? Okay. If you took one long trip that was more than a year outside of the United States, you do not meet this requirement. You need to, once you come back to the United States, just wait, stay here longer, and then apply, okay? So people ask me, well, I applied for a re-entry permit because I knew I was going to be outside for longer than a year. That re-entry permit allows you to come back into the United States, but you would still not meet this requirement to apply to be a citizen. You still need to wait longer in the United States before you apply, okay? And the next requirement, physical presence, also has to do with travel and time outside of the United States. So physical presence is the time an applicant has been physically present in the United States. It's cumulative, and trips 1 day or more outside the US counts against it. So what are we looking at? Okay, so in the last 5 years, or last 3 years if you're married to a US citizen, you are adding up all your trips that you took outside of the United States. So maybe you spent 1 month in Vietnam, or 2 weeks in India, or 1 week in Mexico, right? All of these times you left the United States in the last 5 years or 3 years if you're married to a US citizen, add up all those dates, and those days should be, if you meet the requirement, it should be half of that statutory period, okay? So 5 years is about 60 months. Half of 60 months is 30 months. So at least 30 months you've spent in the United States, okay? Same thing for based on 3 years, half of that time is about 18 months. So 18 months, not continuously, just after you add up all your trips, 18 months should be that time in the United States. You're also adding your time after you applied. So like I said, at the interview, the officer will ask, are there any updates to your application after you applied? So this is where you're going to add any other trips that you've had. And here's an example of what the form looks like. If you're just filling out the form, the questions go exactly to this point. You know, how many total days did you spend outside the United States in the last 5 years? And 1 day is 24 hours or more. So if you just went to Mexico for 6 hours, that doesn't count, okay? It's got to be longer than 24 hours or longer, right? So jurisdiction, okay? You must live in the state or USCIS district where you apply for naturalization and live there for at least 3 months before you apply. So if you meet all the requirements, you're ready to apply, but perhaps you're moving to Arizona or moving to another state, we just ask you live in that state for at least 3 months, establish your residency there, and then apply for naturalization. We just don't want people moving around the country just to try out a different office, right? Just live where you live and apply once you've lived in that location for 3 months. Okay, good moral character. So applicants must show you have good moral character during the statutory period up until the oath of allegiance, right? Committing certain crimes during that period show a lack of good moral character. So this doesn't mean you are a perfect person or we're looking at, you know, sort of ethical moral standards. That's the opinion of the officer. That's not the case. This is a legal requirement. Most of the questions on the N400 form go to asking and checking whether you've met this legal requirement. So all the have you ever questions, right? So look at the naturalization form, the N400, you'll see several have you ever, you know, committed a crime? Have you ever not paid taxes, for instance? All those questions go to checking if you have the good moral character to become a citizen. Okay, so here's some examples, right? Have you ever claimed to be a US citizen before? Have you ever registered to vote in any election in the United States? So all of these questions are checking on that. And we really ask, you know, and of course you're under oath to tell the truth. So be sure to do that. There is questions about any crimes you've committed or citations. If you've ever been pulled over by the police, you know, have you ever, so ever in your life, had that happen? So you do want to fill that out on the form and put all the correct information on your form. Okay, for instance, here is that box on the form that asks about if you've ever been arrested, cited, detained, or charged. You want to know when, where, and the outcome. So perhaps you were pulled over for speeding several years ago, and you've paid the ticket, or you've gone to traffic school, or you went to court, and that's done, and in the past you took care of it. Well, just write that on your form or in your online application, and that's what we need to know. Okay, so knowledge of English and civics. So the applicant must understand, speak, read, and write basic English. If you can understand me today, you're doing great in this area already. And that knowledge of US history and government, well, we give you a lot of resources to prepare for this. So there are 100 questions that we already provide to you. And out of those 100 questions, you will randomly be asked up to 10, and you only need 6 correct to pass, okay? So this is not an open book or just whatever question the officer feels they may want to ask you about US government or history. We give you the 100 questions already, and that's what you need to study to prepare. There are some people who can become US citizens without learning English. Okay, how is that possible? It's really if they're a little bit elderly in age and they've been a permanent resident for quite a long time. So you can see on this chart, if an applicant is 50 years old and has 20 years as a permanent resident or 20 years as a green card holder, right? Or 55 years old and 15 years as a permanent resident, they don't take the English test. So that means they can do the interview in their own language. Okay, so they'll be doing the interview in Spanish, in Hindi, in Vietnamese, whatever is their own language. Okay, they will be taking the civics test, but they will take it in their own language. So this is the case where the applicant can bring an interpreter, but also our offices, we contract with an interpreter service on the phone. So the officer can just call an interpreter on the phone and have them translate during the interview. Okay, if someone's 65 years old, at least, or older, and they've been a permanent resident for 20 years, they can have their interview in their own language. And also they have a simplified civics test. They only need to study 20 questions, okay, also in their own language, right? Not the 100, so they only have 20 questions. Okay, some people who have disabilities, they can still become US citizens. So we don't discriminate against those who have disabilities. Their doctor would fill out a special form called the N648, and the doctor will have to fill it out correctly and explain why that person's medical issue and a diagnosis does not allow them to study or learn English. Okay, the doctor really needs to make that connection. We call it a nexus. Needs to be a medical doctor or a DO or a clinical psychologist is just fine, but it really should be a regular doctor. We know there are a lot of scams out there in the community. I've heard a lot about them where even some doctors are advertising that, you know, you can get your citizenship quickly or more easily if you come see me. Just be aware that a lot of that is just a scam to take your money and not really help you in this process. Okay, and finally, you need to show an attachment to the Constitution of the United States. How do you do that? Well, there are about 5 or 6 questions at the end of that N400 application form that asks you, are you willing to support and defend the United States Constitution? Are you willing to bear arms? So depending on how you answer those questions, that shows your attachment, okay? There are certain waivers to that if people, you know, based on their religion can't answer that, so that's a separate process. And also showing your attachment is going to the oath ceremony and, you know, raising your right hand and swearing allegiance to the United States. And that's really it. The immigration officer will never ask you about your political opinion or anything else. You know, that's really the ways to show your attachment to the Constitution. It's really those questions on the form and taking the oath of allegiance. And going to the oath ceremony is that final step, right? So after you're approved, that's where you become your US citizen and you're issued a naturalization certificate as your proof of citizenship. To travel outside of the United States, you do need to get a US passport. You cannot travel and come back in based on your naturalization certificate. And here's some pictures of our local oath ceremonies. You can see in San Jose, they take place outside in the parking lot of the office that you've been to already for your interview. And you can see everybody is masked there. And in Sacramento, they happened at the fairgrounds in Roseville. In San Francisco, they happen almost every day. So if you have an interview there, you know, probably around before 2:30ish or so, you will probably be scheduled for an oath ceremony the same day. You'll leave the building and then come back on the other side of the building to enter for your oath ceremony. In Fresno, they're also taking place in the office there during the week. Okay, so filing again, go to our website, uscis.gov/forms, and you'll go to see the form. Please go to our correct website, uscis.gov. Gov stands for government. So that's how you know it's the right website. There are other websites, .com, .net, those are all scams. We do know of people who've unfortunately entered their information and then they received phone calls saying you owe us money. You know, our agency, other federal government agencies, we will never call you and ask you for money over the phone. If that's the case, somebody saying I'm from the FBI, I'm from the IRS, Social Security, USCIS, you owe us money. That's a scam. Just hang up right away. Okay. So when you go to our website, look at the instructions, look at the form, get a feeling for what you're going to fill out before you actually do it. We recommend people downloading it, writing in the answers, and then, doing a final version. And even if you're applying online, it's pretty simple the way to do it. So you can, save your draft, come back to it, whatever you need to do for the online version as well. So let's talk about the interview. Okay, some of you have applied and maybe you're listening in and joined to prep for that interview. Okay, so before you go to your interview, of course, COVID is still around. It's spreading pretty rapidly actually right now. Unfortunately, it's going up again. So should you reschedule? Well, if you're feeling sick for any reason, even if it's not related to COVID, please call our contact center and reschedule. Do not come in if you're feeling sick. If you have close contact with anyone known or suspected to have COVID in the last 14 days, again, please call and reschedule. There's no penalty to do so. And we know cases are on the rise. So please, be vigilant about this. Okay, so let's say everything's good, you're healthy, and you're prepping for your interview. You're going to bring some documents with you, right? So what do you bring? Of course, bring that appointment notice, bring your green card, your permanent resident card, bring your ID, okay, that has your picture. If you traveled in the last 5 years or 3 years based on your marriage to a US citizen, okay, bring your passports, right? Even if they expired, whatever you used in those last 5 years to travel, bring those. If you have any birth, marriage, divorce, death certificates, official documents like that, bring that, okay? You may have submitted copies with your form, but just bring the originals, okay, to the interview. If you were in any criminal court proceedings, remember that question? Have you ever been arrested, detained? So if you have documents from criminal court, please bring those in, okay? If you have a legal name change document, bring that. So if you're legally changing your name, bring in a document to show that. The marriage certificates, many of those, or even divorce certificates, they have a section about changing your name. So if you're doing that, do so. So on the application form, there is a question that says, would you like to legally change your name? In our offices in Northern California, so that's San Jose, San Francisco, Fresno, Sacramento. In all of these 4 offices, we actually cannot legally change your name, even if you marked it on the form. That's because our ceremonies at the end, the oath ceremony, does not incorporate a judge, okay? It's our officers and our sort of managers who are running those ceremonies and giving that oath of allegiance. So if you do want to change your name legally, please do so before the interview. Go to the court or city hall and go through that process to legally change your name before the interview. That way, your certificate of naturalization has your correct legal name that you want. All right, tax documents. So that's helpful to bring if you're married to a US citizen and applying based on that marriage. The officer wants to know that you're still married to that US citizen. So showing tax documents is very helpful to have both your name and your spouse's name, pictures of you together, rental agreements, things like that, mortgage, anything that shows you're still married and have been married for the last 3 years. It's very helpful. And again, when you submit your application, if you're doing it in the mail, only submit copies, don't send us originals. But when you come to the interview, bring the originals with you, okay? Here you see a picture of a mask. We do recommend wearing a mask. Right now, since that community spread level is at a medium, it's optional, but we highly recommend it because we know the cases are sort of increasing at this time. And we just say, bring your own pen if you need to sign anything. It's just helpful to keep things sort of sanitary in that way. Okay, who can come with you? All right, so, still COVID is spreading, so we're limiting the people coming into the office. Your lawyer or your accredited representative can be with you or on the phone, okay? Interpreter, if you qualify to have an interpreter based on meeting the age and time as a permanent resident, they can be in person or also on the phone. But if you have a disability, of course, you can bring someone with you. We just ask, don't bring family and friends with you to your appointments, just so we can limit that spread of exposure for COVID, okay? And some helpful reminders is, since you've applied, There were several months passed, and then you had the interview. So did you travel? Okay, did you change addresses? Did you have a new employer? Any new information, you can bring a list of it. And at the interview, the officer might probably ask you anything change. You know, since you applied, you can say, officer, I have a list. Would you like to see it? Sometimes that's helpful for the officer. Some officers will say, no, you know, we'll just go through the form and then we'll do the updates as we go. Okay, so let's explain the interview now. What happens? You come to the office, okay, and you go through security, right? The security officer will ask you, let me see your appointment notice, your ID. You go through a metal detector. Generally, you take your shoes off, your belt off. Don't bring loose change or don't bring any weapons, nothing sharp with you. You'll be asked to keep that outside. And then you go to a check-in desk where, you know, again, you'll show your appointment notice, your ID, your green card there. And an officer, immigration officer, staff person will check you in, and then you go to the waiting room. Okay. Once you're in the waiting room, the immigration officer who's going to interview you will come to the waiting room and will ask you by name. Okay, where, you know, are you there? And then bring you back to their office for the interview. If you have to go to the bathroom and you're anxious, no problem. Go ahead, use the restroom. You know, the officers come out 2 or 3 times just to make sure that they find you there. If you've been waiting a while, you know, let's say about 30, 40 minutes or so, and no one's called you for an interview, go ahead, go back to the check-in desk and let them know you've been waiting, and they can kind of see what's going on with that. So the officer will take you back to the office, to their office, okay? They'll make some small talk with you, ask you, how you doing? How do you feel? Maybe how you got here, just to check, you know, make you feel comfortable, and also check your level of English. You know, this is really letting the officer know how much do they need to adjust their level of English so the interview can go smoothly. Okay, and the officer will take you to their office. They will ask you to raise your right hand to put you under oath to tell the truth. Okay, they'll probably ask you to sit down, put your bag down, whatever, and ask to see your documents. You know, can I see your ID, your green card? And they'll verify, you know, what's your name. They'll start going through your N400 form, just sort of the biographical part, right? What's your name, your date of birth. And pretty soon after that, they will give you the civics test. So the officer will ask you the question, okay? And you need to speak the answer back to the officer. And the computer the officer's on randomly gives 10 questions, and you need to get 6 correct to pass, okay? So only 60%. After that, the officer will give you the reading and writing test for English. Very simple sentence in English to read and a very simple sentence in English to write, okay? You can write in all caps, but just make sure you write every single word, right? The entire interview, the officer is assessing your ability to speak and understand English. And basically, most of the interview is reviewing the N400 form that you already filled out. It's all about you, so you're going to know all the answers. The best way to practice is to work with someone. I know many libraries have mock interviews programs as well, where someone is just reading the questions from the form and you're answering those questions, okay, and answering them honestly. Here's a picture sample of offices. So in person, you'll see the plexiglass, that screen between you and the officer. The officer's most definitely wearing a mask. It's optional, but right now it's optional at least, but most of them are wearing masks. In San Francisco, if you're going to an interview there is an option for virtual. So you may be called back and the officer will say, well, you have a virtual interview today. Basically, you're going to talk to somebody through the iPad, the immigration officer through the iPad. It's like having a Zoom meeting, you know, and that's how the officer will communicate with you and have the interview. Okay. So reading, for instance, on the iPad, it'll show a sentence. Please, you know, read this sentence. So here's an example of a sentence to read. What country is north of the US? If you can't read that, the officer will say, you know, here's another sentence to read. Try this one. Okay, what was the first state? If you can't read that one, you get 3 chances. Who can vote? Okay, so for this, for the reading practice test, for the reading test, you get 3 chances. Same for the writing. So on the iPad, you're going to write, the officer will say, Canada is north of the United States. Please write Canada is north of the United States. This is just a sample, okay? Then you'll write it down, right? Canada is north of the United States. And if you don't get that right, well, they'll dictate another sentence, word for word, you write that down. If you don't get that right, they'll say one more sentence. So you get 3 chances every time, okay? On the iPad there, you'll see, or the tablet, you can erase, you can clear it, things like that. Your handwriting's not perfect on those tablets, but it's working out fine with the officers. They'll work with you. And so some civics questions, here's a practice, right? The officer will ask the question, what do we show loyalty to when we say the Pledge of Allegiance? And you just speak the answer, okay? What do we show loyalty to when we say the Pledge of Allegiance? The United States or the flag, okay? So again, they'll just say the answer to you. What is supreme law of the land? And you speak the answer back, Constitution, okay? Who did the United States fight for in World War II? Okay, and you speak the answer, right? Japan, Germany, and Italy. Okay, here's just another sample question. What is the capital of your state? Okay, what is the capital of your state? Right, and you say the answer. Sacramento for those of us in California, right? Okay. So after the interview, right, it's about 20 minutes. It's not very long. The officer gives you a document that lets you know the outcome. Okay, it'll have your A number, the officer's name, and it says, congratulations, you've passed. No, I need some time. The officer needs some time to make a decision, or you didn't, and you're going to be called back to come in about 2 to 3 months, okay? If you're approved, you may attend an oath ceremony on the same day or later day. So like I said, in San Francisco, they're happening generally on the same day. In San Jose, they're happening twice a month. So in June, they're happening on Saturdays. And I believe in July, they're happening on 2 of the Fridays in July. And the oath ceremony is when you become a citizen, right? It's not the interview. It's at the oath ceremony is when you become a citizen, okay? If you don't pass, you have a second interview in 60 to 90 days, right? That's 2 to 3 months. And the officer may request more evidence from you, okay? So if they ask you, I need more information, I need more evidence for something, they're gonna put it in a letter. They're not just gonna tell you and you just send it in whenever. They'll give you a formal letter. The letter will explain exactly what you need to send and the address to send it to, okay? And they give you a deadline, right? So right now, because of COVID, we have some flexibilities. You have, if your, that letter for more evidence is dated from, I believe it was March 1st, 2020 until July 25th of this year, you get a letter, you actually have 60 more days to send in that evidence past the deadline, right? But you just wanna look at our website in the news section to see if there's any updates on that policy, because it's just up to July 25th of this year. However, the sooner you bring in that evidence and send it to us, the faster your case is completed. All right, let's talk about resources. So after this session today, I know it's being recorded and there's a recording on the library's YouTube page, but you can also check out our resources on our USCIS website, of course. Has all the study materials there, vocabulary words, videos, audio learning. You can find classes. The library has classes too for citizenship. And we have a pocket study guide. So those of you going to your biometrics appointment, you will receive this nice little guide that has the 100 questions already there, so you can carry it with you. If you don't go to a biometrics appointment because we're reusing your biometrics, you can look on our website, you can print it out if you like, it's all there. There's great resources as well. We have an app. So if you go to the App Store, you'll see an app that has a torch with the red flame. That is the official USCIS app. It is multiple choice. It has a disclaimer that the actual interview is not multiple choice, right? So it's just for practice, because as you know, when you go to the interview, the officer asks you the question and you say the answer back, right? For the civics questions. We have a great YouTube channel as well. Go to YouTube USCIS. There's videos there, entire playlist of officers saying the question and saying the answer. So those who learn better just by hearing and listening, that's a really good option as well. So lots of resources for you to pass because we really want you to pass. and become a citizen. Okay, benefits of an online account. It's really great to make that online account, even if you file by mail. And I know several people have a fee waiver. There is a fee waiver available for those who have a very low income. There's also a reduced fee available. You pay half the amount if you are under a certain income level as well. So if you're using those fee waiver or reduced fee, unfortunately, you cannot apply online. But after you apply, you'll get a letter saying, please make an online account, and basically all the benefits of applying online are yours as well. So you check your case status there, you receive your notices for your interview notice or any correspondence letters are all in your online account. Change your address there, submit a case inquiry, send us messages, things like that in your online account. Also on our website, you can check your case status. You can change your address. So changing your address, really important. If you move within 10 days of moving, you need to update your address with us. That is the rule with any applications you have with USCIS. Changing your address with the post office does not change your address with us. We don't talk to the post office about addresses, right? You need to go on our website. The best way to do it is on the website, not by paper. On the website and change your address with us. Okay, you can check processing times. I already went over that. And then we have a lot of how do I do certain things? How do I petition for my relatives? How do I show my employer I can work? Things like that. A lot of guides and great tools on our website. And you can ask Emma as well. She's a virtual assistant that helps sort of guide you through the website and what you need. You can also call the contact center for questions about your case, 1-800-375-5283. I know they're open. Pacific Standard Time is 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. for a live assistance. I do need to talk about avoiding scams. I mentioned a few. We have a whole web page, multiple web pages dedicated to this because we know there's unfortunately a lot of scammers out there. So please go to our website, get the correct form. No one should ever charge you just for the form. I've heard people charge just $25 for a form. Forms are free. You do have to pay the filing fee when you apply, but the form itself is free, right? You can find ways to report an immigration scam, and just get the correct legal services to help you if you're unsure about what to do. Those of us in Santa Clara County, we're very lucky. We have an immigration fraud unit within the sheriff's office. There's really not many of these in the country that we have dedicated officers going after immigration fraud. So if you have any tips for them, you're seeing something where somebody's practicing immigration law, does not have the right credentials to do so, please notify them with this information here. If you do need legal assistance, the best way to go is there's several nonprofits that help for free or low cost. The Department of Justice has their website where you can get access and their contact information. We have several in Santa Clara. We're very blessed to have that. And I know the library has links to their the nonprofits as well that are very helpful. So they can help you. If you are going to contact an attorney, totally fine. Just make sure you check their credentials and their background. Okay. In California, we also have immigration consultants. So they can sign up and pay a certain fee and get certified to be immigration consultants. So if you see that certificate, they cannot provide legal assistance. Okay, they're not required to have training in immigration law. Like those who work for nonprofits do, and immigration attorneys, of course, have that training, but immigration consultants, there's no requirement. So they can only help with clerical functions and translation. Okay, they cannot provide legal advice. Okay, I'm going to go through several helpful reminders and then I'll take questions. Okay, so again, the officers in the San Francisco, San Jose, and Sacramento and Fresno offices cannot make legal name changes just based on your form. You will need to get a legal document through the court or city hall. Marriage certificates, divorce certificates, right? Those are all ways to legally change your name, okay? When you have 6 months or more validity left in your green card, okay, your green card's not going to expire for another 6 months, right? It's best to apply when you have at least 6 months or more. So this will allow you to receive a 6-month extension on your green card, okay? So if you've applied, right, 6 months before your green card expires and you need to show evidence that you're still in valid status, that you're still a permanent resident, okay, to show someone, right? Just because your green card expires doesn't mean you're not a permanent resident. You will always be a permanent resident unless you are going to immigration court and that immigration judge takes away your permanent resident status. Okay, even if your green card expires, you're still a permanent resident. You just don't have an updated card, right? But you can still apply to naturalize, okay, before it expires. Even if it expires, you can still apply to naturalize. And it's okay, you can still apply. But if you apply before your green card expires, 6 months before your green card expires, and then your green card expires, what you can do is make an InfoPass appointment, as we call it. You call our contact center, you make an appointment to come in, and they will give you a stamp in your passport. So you do need a valid passport from your home country to get that stamp that it sort of extends the life of your green card. All right, I know that was a lot of info there. Okay, if you can apply online, be sure to correct the correct version of the N400 form by mail, and you should really mail it certified or registered is the best way to go to make sure you know that it gets to us. And then afterwards, create an online account. Okay. Fill out a practice N400 form before you submit the original, the one that you send in, and keep a copy for yourself to study. Okay. And of course, always send copies of any evidence to us and bring the originals to your appointment. If you've traveled, right, in the last 5 years, bring all the passports and re-entry permits to the interview, okay? Last 5 years or last 3 years if you're applying based on marriage to a US citizen, okay? Bring a list of any changes since you applied, such as any international travel, address, or employment changes. When you get your appointment notices, read it and read it carefully and follow the instructions. I know the print is small, but please read it and follow the instructions carefully, okay? Give yourself extra time to arrive and go through security. So, you know, once you have your appointment, you know, you've waited a long time for this. You've paid a lot of money for this, right? It's the final step. So do what you can to not be nervous. Even the people who don't think they're nervous, somehow they end up being nervous once they go through security. It happens naturally. So maybe go to the office, you know, a couple days before, make sure you know how to get there. What's your route? You know, how are you going to go on public transportation? Check out the parking situation, right? How is it all going to work out? So that way you're less nervous when you come for your actual appointment. Okay. And again, if you move, you change your physical address, please go to our website within 10 days of your move and change your address with us. We really want to make sure we're sending your mail and any decisions to the correct address. Okay, so that's the presentation. I hope it answered some of your questions already, but I'll go ahead and take any questions, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen as well.